So now we're going to talk about erasing. I'm going to go over first the tools, and then I'm going to talk about some of the alternatives to erasing, and we'll talk about why we don't want to just erase pixels out of our file. All right, I'm going to use this model headshot image here. We'll go ahead and open this up inside of Photoshop, and let's talk about some of the eraser tools, which is right here. Now, by default, you're going to select the eraser tool, and you have a different way of using it. You can use it as either a brush, a pencil, or a block. And the difference between a pencil and a block is a pencil, let me just make a larger image here, or a larger brush is round, and the block is square. Okay? So I'll go back to my brush here, and we'll talk about some of this here. So we do have the ability to erase into history. So as I erase this, I don't have any history, but you would erase to history. Okay, so if we go back to our history palette, you notice it's right here that we've used it. And the other, big thing, let me get a larger brush here. The other big thing that we're going to talk about, let me just close this, is when we erase, we're really not erasing on this particular layer. Okay, so as I paint this out, it looks like I've erased the background. Well, what I've really done is I've just painted this background color. Okay, so if I was to switch these colors and put the white in the front and the black in the back, okay, and I paint, I'm using my eraser, but it's not erasing. Okay, it looks like it's erasing, but it's not. So why would we use this eraser? Well, let's open up the layers palette. We're going to have to get in there and talk about what's going on. You have this very unique layer called a background layer. And you'll notice it has a little lock next to it. That is telling the system that you cannot erase this background. Okay, something has to be there, and it's just going to either paint it with whatever the background color is or whatever your pixels are. So how do we work around that? Well, first of all, let's remove the word background. And all we have to do is double-click on that word background and hit OK. And now you notice the lock has gone away. This is no longer a background layer. And now my eraser is going to behave very differently. So now when I click and drag, you see that checkerboard underneath. Okay, so if I erase some of this, you see how that behaves. Okay, completely different results. Now here's my overall issue with this tool. And that is, if I erase something, okay, I come in and I accidentally erase her arm, that's gone. It's gone for good. Okay, so let me undo that one step. I don't like this tool for the sheer fact that as a beginning user, you get into the habit of removing pixels, and as an artist, you have no way of bringing those pixels back besides reopening the image and doing all of it over again. So my strategy that I'd like to show you very quickly first, and we'll go back and have a separate lesson on this, is masking. Okay, so quickly, let me grab a paintbrush here. I'll just go to my brush tool. And where it says Layer 0, I'm going to come down here to this third icon, which is the Layer Mask icon. Okay, we'll just click on that one time. Now, if you click on it 2 times, you're going to get a vector mask, and we don't want that. If you do accidentally select or click on it twice, it's no problem. Just take that last one and drag it, click and drag it to the trash can. It'll say, are you sure you want to throw that vector mask away? Just say, okay. So now, depending what has this outer stroke around it, let me actually make this a little bit bigger just so it's easier to see. There we go. You notice that it has a line around what I'm working on. So right now, I am working on pixels, okay, on the actual image. And if I click on this little white square, what I'm working on is the mask. Now, the way this works is wherever it's white, the image will show through. And wherever it's black, let me just switch these colors by clicking this little arrow. Wherever it's black, we are going to erase. Okay, so let's just get ourselves a nice solid brush here that we can, let me make a little bit larger, and we can test this theory out. Okay, so let's say we come through here, and I erase off this background here. And I make a mistake, and I chop off too much of her arm. And the art director comes back and says, boy, that's too much. Her arm, we need to bring more of her arm back. Well, if I would have erased, that information is long gone. However, by using this mask, okay, what I can do is switch this from black and white to white and black, okay, or just make this white. You can click and pick a white color. And now, watch what happens. As I paint this back, what I'm actually doing is I'm painting my mask back in. So in reality, all those pixels are still there. Let me just paint all this in. So where I erased, those are gone for good. However, when I masked, I still have that information that I can bring back and forth. So if I wanted to, I could erase out kind of her body like this. But when I want it back, I can just paint that right back in. Okay, so we're painting the mask. So let me revert this image. I think we've beat this image up quite a bit. And we'll take it back to the standard. We're going to double click on the word background and click OK. All right. Let's talk about the other two eraser tools. Now, the background eraser tool is a pretty cool, amazing little guy. All right. What it can do, if we look up here in our options, we have a few options here. The first one is sample continuously, which is what we're going to do. Okay. This one will let you sample one time and then pick any colors that are similar to that. And this one is sample the background. So in my case, it would only erase the white. Okay, so we'll sample continuously. Now, the limits, this is a very interesting. By default, it's contiguous. Okay, and what that means is, as I click and drag along here, look what's happening. Let me zoom into this area. Okay, let me pick this other shoulder. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the background area, and notice it preserves her jacket. Okay, because the system knows that based off of this tolerance, this background is not this jacket. Okay? Now, by changing this to discontiguous, what that means is it's going to grab any of those pixels. Let me see if I can find an area that is easy to find. There we go. So along her hair, you notice it grabbed this area right here as well. Okay? It makes short work of some really hard masking chores. Now, you do have another option, which is Find Edges, which works really well when you don't have these really fine pieces. You know, it has a hard time, like right there on her ear where her hair is. And you don't get as clean of a mask. Now, there is one really cool option, and let me find an area where we can demonstrate this. All right, let's talk about right here on her shirt. Okay, let me just pull back a little bit. If I try to erase this, you notice her shirt disappears? Well, what I can do is say protect the foreground color. So what I can do is grab my eyedropper right here, which we'll talk about in just a second, click on the shirt, and then when I come in here and I paint, it protects that shirt from getting erased. Okay, so it's just another, see how it grabbed her skin and erased her skin? I can come in, sample her skin color, and then when I come in to erase, it protects her skin. So it just gives you another level of control. Now your tolerance, depending on how high you set this, you're going to erase lots of things, right? So if I set this to a very high tolerance and I come over here and I click her hair, you notice I start just chunking out her hair. However, if you set this too low, you're going to get a very spotty result because it's only going to get a few. So you may have to come in a number of passes and get it all cleaned up. But this is one way of very quickly going through and erasing a background element and extracting your image from the background. All right, one more tool and then we're going to move on. And that's, let's revert this image one more time. Take a look at her. And that right here is the Magic Eraser tool. Now, the way this works is very similar to the Magic Wand tool in that we click once and it will go through and find all of those similar pixels and erase them. Now, this does not mask them. So if you want to mask and use that technique I showed you earlier, you'll want to use the either continuous color or the Magic Wand and pick. Now, you do have an option here, which is contiguous. If I turn that off, what it's going to do is it's going to grab everything that's gray. So notice parts of her shirt disappeared, her collar disappeared, even areas on her glasses have now disappeared. So that's the difference. If I undo that and turn on contiguous and click right here, you notice it does not affect her shirt. It only goes around the area. And it makes a little bit of easy work of this process. Okay. So next we'll talk about gradients.